Senua, the outcast who became a warrior.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold on there, buddy. Slow down with the recaps. I think we've got this handled.
Who faced her demons and challenged the gods for her lover's soul.
Motherfucker, I am not playing with you right now. What's up, boys and ghouls? It's your boy Dripping Yellow Madness here to give you the rundown on the last time on Herp Derp, Cyndi Lauper's Sand Life. And yes, I am drinking straight from the bottle. Considering it's been 7 years since the game released and thus since the last time I played it, it felt only right that before the release of the sequel, I go back and see if my opinions still hold up.
Previously on the Crypt Revue!
This would have made for a much better experience if they simply did away with the gameplay, and that's damning enough. Best game I've seen in nearly a decade don't mean shit when it's the worst game I've played in just as much time. And I have played the Thief reboot and Layers of Fear.
Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, tells the tale of a nebulously Gaelic girl in which I assume based on the fact that her boyfriend and her dealer are both obviously some form of Irish, and the fact that she's wearing a tartan, with voices in her head as she journeys to Helheim to bargain with Hela to get her boyfriend back. It advertised very heavily on the binaural audio for the experience, and for you Zoomers out there who don't understand my old person speak, binaural audio is that thing you kids like to call Dolby Digital Surround Sound. Something that, at the release of the game, had only been used in video games for a mere 2 fucking decades. Seriously, go back and play Clive Barker's Undying, then go further back and play Thief and realize it's been there for a really fucking long time, and what new things come to console have been on PC for longer than you've been alive. But hey, millennials and Zoomers making up new names for things and pretending they invented it is literally all they have going for them, but I digress. This use of audio for its atmosphere and storytelling comes in the form of psychosis and schizophrenia being stand-ins for the Furies, the name given to the voices crazy people heard. In practice, it means a crazy lady is going to be constantly whispering in your ears in what I will now refer to only as BPD ASMR. Good shit! Anyway, so Senua's boyfriend is dead, and she's gotta take his dome because what woman doesn't like a little head, so she can reclaim his soul and bring him back to life. And along the way, her sleep paralysis demons won't shut the hell up, and the disembodied voice of her dead meth dealer is constantly telling her stories of the Northmen, and within the first hour they say the darkness more times than Johnny Powell will in his entire life.
You say your world has collapsed. Good. Let it collapse. And have the courage to shed your tears.
I found a new god, Senua. It's called methamphetamine. Hoi-ta-toi-ta-toi-ta-toi. To open the gates to Viking hell, Senua must defeat the heinous fire giant Surt, as well as Val Raven, the god of illusion, not to be confused with regular Raven, the god of true Norwegian black metal, or Van Halen, the gods of regular metal. From there, she gains access to the whatever the fuck on her descent, and shit happens, and she rejects the broken sword runs and returns to Monkey, gets legendary sword, and then right before the final boss, a huge twist in the story is thrown at you despite literally no hints being given to it, and they try to pretend there's some great mystery they're writing. The combat is okay. You do 3 things: attack, block, or dodge. Time the block right, and you parry. The last time I stood before you, I was but a boy. Now, you face a parry god. It's incredibly simple and it is satisfying, but it's not deep or satisfying enough to make the runtime, so combat is pretty sparse. What the game focuses mostly on is walking, listening to idiots who won't shut the hell up while every single metaphor, visual nod, framing device, and plot point is explained in excruciating detail, because Ninja Theory thinks you're too stupid to understand anything or come to your own conclusions once again just before throwing everything they spend the game setting up away just to throw and twist ending at you. What this looks like is walking in straight lines looking for the spot that you have to look at a thing from. That's it. It's a walking simulator trying to emulate Norse storytelling, but not letting you appreciate the metaphor and framing devices and presenting the player with zero mystery only to change it all at the end. Senua's crazy, and she was a shut-in, and yes, in fact, I can relate, and her mom was also crazy. Daddy was a big old meanie pants about it, but he loved his family. I guess. One day, Mommy got tired of the voices and killed herself. Then plague happened. Then Vikings came and made everybody a corpse. And Senua's going through all this inner turmoil and looking back on the life her basic white bitch issues put her through and defying the gods, and literally right at the end you enter the final boss fight room, Senua's anti-crazy pills kick in, and she unlocks the secret hidden within her all along. Yes, Senua's mother is also Alucard's mother, and she didn't kill herself. It was Daddy who set her on fire all along. She tells Dracula spelled backwards not to hate humanity, and Senua to gather her ashes, boil some water in a shallow pan and add the ashes to it or something, and Sibilance learns it was all lies. But if it was all lies, what is she doing? And is this god real? And does she need to do the final boss? Does she need to kill the lie inside her? Is the lie in the room with us right now? And the game just keeps telling you to put the controller down so the final cutscene can play in a big old metaphor for letting go of the lie, i.e. D-D's head or whatever his name was. And accept that you cray-cray and your boy is dead and he ain't coming back. Delicious. To be fair, visually it's aged incredibly well thanks to them combining the TurboGrafx with an incredibly well executed aesthetic and atmosphere, but it sadly becomes one of the best looking games I've seen, paired with one of the worst to actually play. And don't get me wrong, this shit isn't lost on me. Exploring mental illness and trauma in a game is what Alice invented, and I understand what they're trying to make. Hella, the big zombie goth GF's corpse side being portrayed as smoldering right after learning Mommy was burned to death by Dad, being the confrontation and acceptance of the lie makes sense, but it all comes so quickly and out of left field that it's more pretentious than deep. I appreciate what they did, I understand it, but I don't appreciate how they did it, and I hate it. They wanted to remake the ending of Alice, but they forgot that you have to have the rest of the game build up to that reveal. Alice didn't just throw it at you, it walked you through it to understanding that was the only thing that could have been. If you didn't expect the reveal at the end of Alice, you weren't paying attention. If you weren't expecting the ending of this game, it's because they did nothing to set it up. Hella's still kinda hot though, and your boy would hit that. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice has the chance to be deep, and they show they understand the use of metaphor, framing, parallels to myths, and yada yada yada. But they just think you're too fucking stupid to get it, fail to actually build a mystery that is satisfying to play through, and just spell it all out for you while asking you to play a pretty painful walking simulator broken up by fun, but otherwise shallow combat. And it's not like they're bad, this is Ninja Theory. They made the only good Devil May Cry since 3, and don't try to fucking come at me, these two are the same fucking character and you know it. They clearly understood the assignment and had some great expertise on how to execute, they just think you're too stupid to get it, so to make sure you get it, they bungle this execution at the finish line. And that's my assessment, 7 years later to catch you all up, and who are you going to believe? Me who just played it, or Microsoft who says I fired the game up and spent 6 hours doing literally nothing? Oh god, what's that? Is it infinity slamming down to destroy the planet? Is it the weight of all my sins finally catching up to me? No! It's some fat retard who dresses up like a sex offender clown and complains about video games. Oh god! God damn, I missed that third chin. The chainmail has since been recycled, however. So it's been 7 goddamn years, and what a wild direction literally everything has turned. Barely a year after Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice released exclusively to the PlayStation 4, Microsoft bought Ninja Theory, and PlayStation exclusive Asterisk became such a goddamn joke that the sequel isn't even slated to release on the Sony video game flagship. That might not be the massive turnaround you think, as in the same month and year of the sequel's release, Microsoft nuked multiple studios they owned, including one they purchased specifically to develop a title for Game Pass. Hilarious, I know, it's like one of these cycles I keep talking about aren't just in my head and you will beg for death before the end, and I'm gonna be all like, huh? Point being, it's been a long goddamn time in the making. Microsoft did absolutely nothing to advertise this game from a company they bought specifically for the purpose of making, and have given it away ostensibly, but not really, for free via Game Pass. Quite literally, the first time I saw any kind of mention of the game from good old Gates was on Twitter after the game came out. It's like pottery. You throw a clump of shit on a table and press a pedal and it goes around and around and around and it just makes a massive fucking mess. You know my thoughts on the previous title by this point, but regardless, I actually had hopes for the sequel. It's easy to get lost in the sauce and fumble at the finish line, and we can always hope they learn from their mistakes and they come back with something bigger and better. They're bridging the gap between indie and AAA after all. I can only make so many cynical jokes here. Let's just say that at the very least, I was hoping they would come back twice as strong and they'd come with something at least truly enjoyable the second time around, and now it's time to see if they accomplish that on any level as we dive cock first into Hellblade 2, Sacrifice This!
He enslaves people. How does it feel to be the one bound and helpless, waiting to die?
I don't give a fuck. I'm a hitman, I'm a stalker, I'm a soldier, I'm a streetwalker. Fuck you, you don't know me, I'm a freak. Never slow down, never sleep. I get so high. Don't play with me, see me, stay away from me. Just let me ride. No, you can't fade me. Ain't trying to hear shit that you say to me.
No, they didn't. In fact, everything about this game is worse than the first except for one minute aspect, and even then it doesn't matter because of just how bad it's fucked. This game is trash that will in no way save Ninja Theory from getting axed in 4 months, and it actually pissed me off. So let's go King Solomon on these bitches and rip this baby apart.
This storm shows us no mercy. We shall respond in kind. Reef the mainsail.
Bring us closer to the wind. The island of time. The place where the sands were created. The place from which the Maharaja stole the hourglass. My swords. Gone.
Earth is shattering. He is not perfect. Set him free.
What is your name? I am the Prince of Persia. I've been waiting for you.
The last game suffered very heavily from criticisms of being a glorified walking simulator, but overall the combat is far better than I originally remembered it being. In fact, it's quite fun and rewarding if you're willing to pay attention and learn its quirks, but overall quote-unquote gameplay is a giant fucking joke. The straight lines are barely lampshaded, and now instead of just listening to the voices in your head, Senua will now talk to people. Hooray! I don't just have to listen to this whiny, annoying asshole and the 3 other whiny, annoying assholes in her head. Now we get 3 more whiny, annoying assholes to listen to! Yeah, walking and talking is 80% of the game, with a further 10 being staring at objects and the remaining 10% being combat. They put a tiny, minute bit more effort into puzzles in the game, however the puzzles are disgustingly simplistic to the point that nothing is gained from completing them. Having to stare at an orb to move a block just to have to stare at it again 5 seconds later is just a roadblock rather than actual gameplay. Made worse by this is how oftentimes you will have to remove a barrier so you can walk up a ramp. What you do at the top of the ramp will reblock the path, and there are no barricades, and so you would think after you complete a task you can just jump off of said ramp. But you can't.
Senua, just like last game, will climb and drop off ledges as she traverses the world, but just like the dreaded yellow paint, she can only do this in designated areas. So if a quote-unquote puzzle asks you to walk back and forth over knee-high elevation, anytime that stepping off the side would be faster, you are arbitrarily not allowed to do so. I shit you not, there will be nothing preventing Senua from stepping sideways to get off the elevated path, yet the game will force you to walk slowly across it, and at the end of it, make a 10-foot drop like it's nothing. Just to get to the same place, stepping slightly to the left would have got you. It's not game design, it's blatant time wasting, flaccidly trying to masquerade as gameplay while undermining itself mere seconds after it has frustrated you. It's a walking simulator of the absolute worst kind, all because it does absolutely everything everyone has hated about dipshit cop-out game design for the past 15 years, which then repeatedly proves to the player none of those design decisions were necessary to begin with. The walking simulator parts are far worse, not just because everything is more bland and designed like the developers are suicidal, but because everything just looks worse. There is absolutely nothing worth seeing in this game. It takes place in Iceland, but at no point do you enter a memorable location, and unless I was informed by the plot synopsis on the game's page, I wouldn't have actually known. Locations visited are as follows: Grey Rocky Beach, Grey Rocky Destroyed Town, New Mexico, caves, more caves, holy fuck, how long are these caves? Grey Rocky Beach, the new Colossus, and Winterhold! And there is absolutely nothing here. Nothing. Empty desolation without a single memorable location or set piece, and that's a problem. Hellblade 1 leaned incredibly heavy into atmospheric crafting and an art style. This has helped the game age incredibly well. Hellblade 2 relies entirely on nebulous bespoke graphics settings. And that's not some kind of weird joke. The graphics settings are so bare bones that I have no idea what most of them actually do. There is no SAA or TFXAA. There's only anti-aliasing high, medium, low. Volumetric effects? What do those do? Do you mean lighting? Shaders? Screen space ambient occlusion? It's all meaningless. No, the game relies entirely on nebulous DLSS and AMD equivalent settings that don't adequately explain to the player what they govern or how it will actually affect the game. Telling me uses AI to predict shader loading to maintain a stable frame rate means fucking nothing, especially when it drops my FPS from 60 to 20 and the picture looks worse and somehow shadow artifacts keep flickering despite the fact they're cast by objects so far in the background they should be baked in.
Grab it!
My leg! My leg!
The game is ugly, not just because it rejects the use of aesthetic crafting, but because it relies entirely on goofy gimmicks, and it's damn near impossible to tell how to fix an issue. It took me nearly 2 hours just to make this dumb wizard stubble stop flickering, and I couldn't tell you what setting or combination of settings made it stop, because I don't know what the hell any of them actually do. DirectX and various drivers and APIs have taken the difficulty out of PC gaming. If you didn't know what any of those settings I named previously are, installing and launching a game would auto-detect your build and get you the best settings, and it's been good. I've never had issues with those functions, and when I didn't like what they gave me, I knew how to adjust it to my liking. But when you have all these bespoke, nondescript settings that don't explain anything and only work half the time, you've made it so your game will never actually look even half decent. Worse, you've destroyed and overcomplicated something that worked fine, turning sitting down and watching a glorified movie into a fucking chore. And as if getting the game to just fucking play at 60 FPS without constant texture and shadow flickers wasn't bad enough, this game does something that nearly made me put it down and walk away from it the very second I took control of Senua. Did you notice it? I've shown it multiple times already. See it? The developers decided that the entire game needed to be presented in letterbox. I have never in my life seen someone bend their spine into a triangle so that they could shove their head far enough up their own ass so they can tongue fuck their own pancreas. That is, until today. It takes a staggering amount of artistic arrogance to letterbox a video game in the year of our darkest timeline, 2024. And every single person who worked on this game should have the taste slapped out of their goddamn mouths for this brazen display. So the walking simulator shit is far more boring. The walking and frantic running in straight lines is in no way improved. In fact, it's made worse first by the setting and surroundings, and then second by the sheer lack of an ability to intelligently tinker with the graphics to make the damn game work right. Despite being on Ultra, not even scratching 7 gigabytes of my VRAM, yet somehow running worse than the previous game with ray tracing on, which means for the gameplay all we have left is combat.
I know you're out there. Show yourself. Where I come from, we face our opponents. And if our enemy is unarmed, we offer them a sword!
Kill him!
Behold my visage. Notice, I ain't under 30 yet somehow balding. A 150-pound soaking wet psychotic woman slaughtering Vikings doesn't need some goofy-ass justification, especially when she's got a sword and a severe case of the I'm mad as hell and I'm not gonna take it anymore. That last game's combat got quite good at times, so hopefully if they can't improve on that, they will obviously just do what they had again, right? They made it worse. The combat is worse. Everything about this game is worse. Remember when I said that? They made the combat worse. So the previous game is about trauma, mental illness, and very little of what Senua experiences is real, so it's easy to assume all those people she killed, especially, the gods, didn't happen. It's excusable and understandable that she would be far more competent and skilled, even if we want to ignore her barely touched upon training. It's okay, like I said, I can buy the premise, and what the combat did was simple, but really damn good. Watch this clip.
Surprise him! End it now. This is nearly the end. Behind you! He's finished. She's ready.
So let me break down what's happening for you. When an enemy starts their attack, you learn the timing. There's not a lot of combat, but it's simple enough that you pick up on timings and nuances very quickly. You know that when an attack starts, you have a certain amount of time before you need to press dodge, and a certain amount of time before you need to press block in order to parry. You learn these timings pretty quickly, and you subconsciously commit them to memory to the point that when you hear the Furies warn you of an attack from behind you, you have half a second, and at the end of that half second, you press the button and it will parry that attack from off screen. The use of the Furies turns the lack of HUD, a low FOV, and frantic combat into something that isn't just manageable, but it's quite the spectacle to pull off. It's cray-cray. It doesn't have to be deep and complex. Bloody Roar, Primal Fury, and DOA 4 weren't deep or complex, and yet they were peak. Here's a fight from Hellblade 2. Notice something? Here's what happens directly after you kill that guy in that fight.
Strong like an ox. You dumbass!
This is how every encounter goes. Every single fight in this game is one-on-one. Every single fight. And Senua's combat prowess is fucking gone. She wasn't lightning fast in the previous game, but she was skilled and reliable. With proper placement, you could interrupt enemy attacks with a heavy strike. With less precision, you could interrupt with a kick. Hellblade 2 is an absolutely indolently paced, turn-based game. Senua's speed and lethality are gone. From start to finish, it will feel like Senua is swinging her sword through molasses. There is no more interrupting enemies. They will take their turn. Worse, dodge timing and parry timing are far more strict. Dodging previously moved Senua a good distance, making its effective window lengthy. This was necessary due to the amount of enemies you would tackle at once. That's gone, and in its place, the dodge timing is akin to the parry timing the first game required. If you are dodging and an attack connects with your body, you take damage. But this rule does not apply to enemies. If an enemy dodges and your sword goes through their body, you miss. If you follow up with a second strike and they are in the recovery animation of their dodge and your sword goes through their body, you miss and then they get a free hit on you. You cannot capitalize on the AI timing a bad dodge. You cannot capitalize on enemy recovery frames. You can only hit an enemy when the game has given you an explicit window to do so. Yet your dodge timing is far more strict than even Bayonetta demands. Parrying is just fucking bad. Enemies will now perform chain attacks, and later in the game these chains will run 5 attacks in a row. Parry timing is so tight that I was unable to ascertain if you could interrupt a combo with a parry, but based on what I previously mentioned, I'm guessing no. And even when you can parry, you don't get that brutal flash cheering on your skill with a free follow-up. No! When you parry, you get a lengthy animation, followed by a lengthy recovery, before you can then attack. These canned animations take just as long as performing the requisite dodges. Worse, aside from the earliest game enemies and like 3 you encounter late in the game, a parry riposte doesn't do any more damage than just waiting your turn after dodging. Some enemies can be insta-killed with a parry and riposte, but by some I mean like 5% of the total enemies in the game will give the player benefit for a successful parry. So it takes just as long as dodging, it doesn't reward the player 90% of the time, it's higher risk, zero reward, and just wastes time that could have been spent actually fighting, and all of that ignores the fact there are enemies that can't even be parried.
Is this Jarnviður?
What?
They're scared. We shouldn't go through here.
No.
Why not?
I just saved your life. Twice. All I'm asking for is some information.
Further complicating matters is Senua herself. She's overselling it all by a factor of 10. With every swing of the sword, Senua just outright screams like she's cutting the entire goddamn planet in half, despite the fact that it's all happening at a snail's pace. Every lethargic thrust is met with over-enthusiastic grunts and wails that just do not match up with the damn near narcoleptic pace. She's faking it, is what I'm getting at. And it's silly at best, really fucking annoying at worst. But what about the magic mirror? In the first game, a focus charge would slowly build up. It could then be used to break enemies protected by illusions, or act as a second wind if you're about to die. Senua's Saga makes the combat worse by having it recharge way faster, and gives Senua the combat skills she had in the first game. It's Hysteria mode. It's a constantly charging devil trigger. It's Manic Pixie Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan mode, and it only exists to make Senua fight like she did in the previous game. They made the combat worse on purpose to give you an ability that made it slightly better to act as a band-aid for how bad they intentionally made the combat. This game fucking sucks! Every aspect of the game portion of the game is an absolute slog that was perfectly made worse than the previous game, and on those merits alone, on the day Microsoft gives you the axe, I'm going to laugh. But there is something they actually did well. They told a pretty decent story, and they managed to do so mostly without insulting my intelligence. Kind of.
Despite all the warnings that I would fail, I have vanquished the Empress and prevented the creation of the Sands of Time. I have defeated the Dahaka and fate itself. It's time to find a way off this rock. I am the architect of my own destruction. So this is it. What is written in the timeline cannot be changed. Come for me, then. All that is yours is rightfully mine.
So Senua has decided for whatever reason that she's a one-woman death machine and she's going to take down the people who slaughtered her village. Cool, whoop some ass, yes queen, slay. Literally. She accomplishes this by posing as a slave so she can get transported to Iceland. Okay, it's not the most original story, but whatever. She gets shipwrecked and manages to capture the leader of the band of slavers whose name escapes me, so I'ma just call him Haircut, cause he got a fancy haircut. She takes him hostage and begins making her way towards his home, only to come across a ruined village. This village has been ransacked by the Droiger, who are performing a ritual of some kind with a guy who dresses like a wandering sorcerer being tied up. She rescues him, and then a fucking giant attacks. But Senua can't do what has to be done and live up to her family name and full life consequences with a fucking giant chasing her, so she's gotta figure out how to deal with it. And I'm not going to go beat by beat on the story, and instead I'm going to take this moment in said story to jump off into what I believe the themes the game was exploring are. And before I begin, go get your most based and racist friends, cause I'm about to say some shit about some black people. When talking about how he was able to finally broach meaningful peace talks with whoever it was he was having a genocide-level beef with, Nelson Mandela said the first thing they both had to do was admit the things they had done. It didn't matter why they did it, only that they did it, and they wanted to stop doing these things and stop having said things done to them. But that first crucial step was to admit it. It was also crucial to understand that if you are meting out persecution at the order of a government, superior, or system, while you share blame, you are also a victim of that government, superior, or system. The reality of the world is that quiet civilization is an illusion. We're dealing with a time, place, and religion that passes no real moral judgments. If in order for the entire tribe to survive, half must be enslaved, then so be it. If in order to survive you must mete out persecution upon a bunch of people who aren't your tribe, so be it. The land is harsh and brutal, there is no time or place for making grand moral judgments, and none shall be held. It is what it is, and it must be done. And there are places on the planet where that still is just daily life. In these places and these conflicts, justice is only being able to say what you did was right regardless of who it hurts, and there's no universal moral behind it. At the end of the day, in order to meaningfully overcome generational tribal trauma and grudge, sometimes you just have to be willing to say it doesn't matter who started it, only what you did is part of it. There is no vengeance, no reparation, and no pound of flesh. All there is admission, acceptance, and letting it go to move forward. This is the essence of what I call, for lack of a better name, grand conflict resolution. As Senua sets out to learn how to kill this giant chasing her, she must seek out the hidden folk who will test her, and should she pass, tell her the history of the giant, giving her the giant's true name, and thus allowing her to kill said giant. Iltaiga, the giantess stalking her, was part of a race of people from the earliest civilizations. One day, everything went to shit and life got hard. People turned on each other, cannibalism kicked off, and life became a nightmare. At some point, this lady offers the god of whatever atrocity befell the world her baby in exchange for a life of not having to worry about this shit no mo. So she gets turned into an insane killing machine. This machine begins rampaging across Iceland. The people can't kill it, they can only appease it. So they offer it food, but food is scarce. So they begin pressing other tribes and demanding tribute to give to the giant. When they can't provide enough food, they take slaves to sacrifice. This leads one of the members of this second tribe to offer up their leader. This gets out amongst Tribe B, the tribe banishes this man, he dies, and all this sorrow and guilt being heaped upon him as he falls into the ocean turns him into a giant. So now Tribe B has Tribe A's bullshit to worry about, as well as their own giant. Hilarious, I know. It's like one of these cycles I keep talking about aren't just in my head and you will beg for death before the end. It's like pottery. You throw a clump of shit on a table and press a pedal and it goes around and around and around and it just makes a massive fucking mess. So, Senua learns the history of Iltaiga, and when she does, the wizard just shows up despite the fact that I've been spelunking for 90 minutes straight, and Wizard and Haircut help perform a ritual which allows Senua to release the giant from whatever it is, and she dies. And this changes everything. Haircut sees that all those as seen on TV ads were real and there does in fact got to be a better way, and he decides to help, vowing to end the slave taking. That's when they're set upon by current leader of Tribe B. You learn more stuff about the second giant and blah 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 blah. Remember when I talked about Nelson Mandela? First off, did you like how I set that up? Show of hands. Who shit they pants? Come on, be honest. Well, the current head of the tribe is friends with Wizard and takes his word that all those as seen on TV ads were real and there do in fact got to be a better way.
Impossible, they can't be killed.
I just saved your life. Twice. All I'm asking for is some information. Tell me where the sands will be created.
She's got what would ostensibly be a blood enemy at knife point, but what she really wants is for the shit to end and to get rid of this intergenerational tribal grudge that is now wrecking her home. And we're gonna go ahead and stop there. The root cause, the inciting incident, who started it, doesn't really matter. The Droiger didn't summon Iltaiga, as the wizard explains, they were just reenacting the rituals they performed in life. There is no rhyme or reason to it worth getting down to, just that it continues to happen and they need to stop it. Everyone just has to admit what they've done, accept where the problems lie and take the responsibility they need to take, and work together to just make the bullshit stop happening. It's grand conflict resolution. It's a story about real world issues, told in a way and with a framing device that, while it would have worked better better if they just made a mini-series. It's mature enough, is told well, and best of all, in a way that doesn't fucking insult my intelligence. I was building this interpretation of events as I went, and everything was leading back to conflict resolution. I have no fucking clue who Mandela was at war with. I just remember enough of him talking about it to paraphrase, but up until the second giant was dead, this is what I believe to be the story the game is telling and the themes it's exploring. It's smart, it's mature, and it doesn't treat me like I can't grasp what they're doing, despite it being done better in a game everyone loved 20 years prior. And absolutely none of it fucking works. Notice how I said giants and all those people she's talking to, and how they have problems with the giants, and a village obliterated by Draugr? Streaks!
Yes, master.
Ring the bell and throw open the gate.
No, master. We mustn't.
Damn your eyes and do as I say. And also, stop calling me master. It's fucking weird. Fine. Jackass.
Your work. Everything you have done, no matter how far you go or which road you travel, they all lead you back to me! Did you miss me? I missed you. I always knew you'd come back to me. You can't escape, but it's okay. I love you, even if you can't love me.
In the previous game, it wasn't real. The so-called Furies were just the pagan mysticism explanation for the voices Senua heard as part of her meth psychosis and schizophrenia. The confrontation with Hela was the understanding that her mother's death wasn't what it seemed, none of this was, and the tragedy that befell her cannot be undone. She probably didn't even kill anyone on that journey. It just wasn't real. And all that gets thrown out and it all becomes canon. Senua did in fact kill Val Raven, and a fire giant, probably bested Hela, her dad was actually Palpatine and somehow he's returned. The Furies aren't in fact just voices in her head, but are the predator natural force sharing real estate with her brain meats. The dead have risen from their graves, the Yoden are eating people, and only through taking Psychology 101 and becoming a marriage counselor can Senua save the world. And she will save the world, the entire world, but first, she has to convince Haircut's dad to stop making sacrifices and let her kill the giant. But there are, in fact, no centaurs at Oxford, and in reality, Haircut's dad is Hillary Clinton keeping these atrocities needlessly going on to maintain the order and keep his power. So there were no giants. So Haircut never witnessed Senua killing one. So why was he so sure she could kill one? So sure that he was willing to fight and be killed by his father?
What if Kylina didn't die in the past, but in the present? The sands would be created, but the Maharaja would fail to find them. They'd never be brought to his palace, and I would never release them. The Dahaka will have no business with me.
The problem with metaphor, in this case the giants, is if the players and the story acknowledges them being real, you can't just erase them. You have to finish the story as if they are. It was obvious very quickly after he came on screen that King of Haircut's tribe was controlling the giants. He even says so. And then they just say there are no giants. And then Senua beats up Ginger Hillary Clinton for interfering in the Middle East so much, and then you get this art house bullshittery about her accepting her solemn role as the savior of humanity. There were no giants! Okay, the giants were a metaphor for the conflicts. So why did the metaphor have to be abandoned in order to get the point across? Because you're stupid. Because you're illiterate. Because the writers have thought up something so incredibly deep, and they've executed it so masterfully, that your pea-brain Celsius room temperature IQ could never have figured out the plot, and they had to tell you at the last minute none of it was real, and he's just a stand-in for tyrants who benefit from propagating genocides between poor people. You're stupid! You're basically a retard! How the fuck do you manage to feed yourself, let alone play this game? When Microsoft unceremoniously shuts your studio down, I will laugh.
But Necro, after Il Tiger is slain, the green folk grant Senua the warmth of the sun and the vibrancy of the natural splendor. Yet when Tribe B shows up, it immediately grows dark and the rain comes. Tribe B brings the rain and wind with them. They take their giant with them wherever they go. Have you not considered that maybe the reason the giants, while acknowledged are as real, are then stated to not be real is because, in the game's story, they are a parable?
Ah, parable. Yes, I had considered that. to combine all this Messiah imagery with parables. I happen to think the writers are rather dumb and up their own ass. But I can't believe they'd be that stupid.
I had another Monica Bellucci dream.
It's all literal. Too fucking literal at times, to the point that half the game everyone is just explaining their feelings. The story, which tries to be meaningful and mature, can't help but insult the player yet again, and because everything is all literal now, the Furies are no longer chiding, encouraging, warning, and harassing Senua all at the same time. Now they're supernatural forces trying to help her. The quote-unquote voices of the dead isn't a pagan mystic way of explaining schizoids. Senua is actually hearing the dead and even seeing their lingering spirits. She's actually communicating with otherworldly forces. But if the voices aren't BPD ASMR and instead here to help her, what does that look like in practice? During the cave spelunking segments, I spent an hour straight lighting braziers, not to be confused with braziers or brazzers, in rooms to activate bridges and clear paths. And at the end of an hour of that, I enter yet another room, and this happens.
A light. A light. What are they saying? Something. Grab the torch. Something needs to be done. Something needs to be done. Something needs to be done. Something needs to be done.
Something needs to be done.
A brazier. Light it. Light it with your torch. A brazier. Light it.
Light it with your torch.
Something needs to be done.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock!
Something has to be done. Light the thing you've lit 80 fucking times. Something has to be done. Hey, player, you still awake? You gotta do something in this room. Unlike all those previous rooms. That's what it looks like. Throughout the game, the Furies will constantly repeat information you were given, constantly tell you how Senua feels about her dead boyfriend, repeat every name you hear 30 fucking times and again when that person is referenced, and constantly fucking tell you to do the thing you've done 30 times right when you're about to do it a 31st. That's what it looks like. Pure autistic dipshittery. When you first hear Iltaiga's name, the Furies say it 20 fucking times, and every time she's referenced, they say her name to make sure the player knows who is being talked about. When the game told me to light a brazier, it was as I was walking directly at it, pressing the interact button to do so, after lighting 30 of them. Hey, listen, look, hey, listen, look, proper noun, same proper noun for the 50th fucking time. 6 hours of that. It's not BPD ASMR, it's worse. And my payoff for sitting through it for 6 hours, as well as the absolute slog that they turned literally everything into, is for them to pull a psych, you're dumb and didn't get it all along. Its madness returns all over again. First game was a tale about mental illness, in which the struggle was internal, and it goes into a sequel that bastardizes literally everything to make a story about a struggle against an external force, and yet again, it gets every single aspect wrong. How many times are we going to do this? It could have been okay. Instead of following Senua, you could have told a new story about a new character and followed the same plot and themes and told it just that little bit better. But you went the Rambo route and called it Senua's Saga, Hellblade Part 2, and not the other way around. If you had made Hellblade an anthology series, it could have worked. But instead, you had to completely undermine everything from the first game, turn it all literal, and at the end, slam on the brakes to insult my intelligence because annoying me with the brain dead look listen didn't annoy me enough to make me stop. You were doing okay enough up to that point. I was convinced all of you had dropped out of 3rd grade with how brain dead the Furies dialogue was, but the framing of the plot was actually good. The combat was donkey balls, made only to slow everything down and gruelingly stretch out the runtime, but if you had just made the mini-series or an audiobook, it could have worked. Literally having to play it was the worst aspect. It's not a game, it's a punishment. Just tell the story instead, and let the story be told without having to drop all pretense and insult the player. I wanted the game to be good. I don't pray for people's failure. What you put into the world comes back to you threefold. I never want a game to be bad. I was hoping the first game was just experimental enough that you figured out we're actually quite smart and that you can tighten up and expand gameplay enough and come back with something that achieves that original goal of bridging the gap between indie and AAA. You came nowhere close, and worse, at the last minute you jumped in to finally insult my intelligence and end off with this fart-huffing I'm so artsy outright balderdash. You just couldn't help but set it all on fire and piss on my boots while you were at it, right when I was rooting for you. I guess the real giants were the friendships we forged along the way. Senua's Saga: Hellblade 2 is trash with zero redeeming qualities. I could not have imagined how it could have been done worse than the first game, but this required outright malice to achieve. The last game insulted the player. This game technically constitutes fighting words. Fuck you, Ninja Theory. Fuck you and everyone who has ever worked for you. I'm the Necroswanson, and you can go fuck yourselves.
Do you see how their hands drag you down? You are everything. What would you do to keep them from harm? What would you do for the truth?
She has to save her. She has to save her.
I'm a goofy goober!